I honestly don't think it's an overreaction to talk about cross-offs already. I know we've only played 3 games, but I think that there's definitive things that we know that we saw with our eyes. I'm going to just bring up the Bengals briefly in this context. I'm not ready to cross them
Not
off
yet.
yet,
Not
but
yet.
dear
Not yet.
God, 0-3 and some of the defensive blunders, I would go so far as to call them blunders, over the course of this last game week were really upsetting to watch. I was on the one hand like a little relieved that one of the Monday night games sucked, so I could just watch one Monday night game of football, and it was this one, and it was a shootout, and I did enjoy it. The Burrow Chase connection looks like they were like, fuck, we got to dial this in now. And they did, right? We can't write them off yet because they always start slow, but they have a big uphill battle at this point with the schedule that they have remaining. And like, I don't know, maybe we have the same conversation about the Bengals every week, every year.
Every fucking year.
But
Every
Bobby,
year.
where are they? I mean, I know we're not crossing them off yet. What do you think's more likely? Are we going cross off in a week or two, or do you think they start to turn it around?
I forget who they play this week.
Let me look it up for you. The Panthers. That's
The Panthers,
get a
right,
fixed
so-
game. That's got to be a let's get it
this,
fixed
this,
game.
this is to get
Andy Dalton and the Panthers.
A new and improved Panthers.
New and
It could go
new and
badly.
improved game.
It's a revenge game for Andy Dalton. Remember that.
They just have no line whatsoever. So if there's any team to get right with no line whatsoever, it's the Panthers. The defense looks really bad. The defense looks really, really bad.
It looks
the
badly
offense
coached.
and I was just gonna say, Zach Taylor might be the worst coach in the NFL at the moment.
That's we're just doing overreactions. That's what we're doing.
You didn't see the like 9 connections of Zach Taylor where he's connected to every team that's
yes. I do agree that he's not great. I do think that there's people that are stealing their paychecks more than him at the moment. And when we come to talk about Chicago, when we come to talk about Chicago, when we come to talk about Dallas, I think we can have those kinds of conversations. But sticking to the Bengals, Mike, I mean, the offense did that thing that it does where it looked absolutely fucking electric. I really love watching the Bengals offense when they're cooking. They're that team.
That O-line is just...
It's bad, but like
garbage.
They can at least scheme around it. And I think Burrow's talented enough and has enough weapons that's kind of the Bengals football that you've been used to watching. I mean, they took that kind of football, that brand of football to the Super Bowl. Is it a dereliction of duty that they haven't done anything to like augment that offensive line and the defense seems to have gotten worse? Yes. We had these conversations about like kind of what direction they were going and like why they seem weird already, but they're still exciting. It's still an exciting brand of football to watch on the offensive side of the ball. So considering the fact that they have this sort of high offensive upside, same question to you. Do you think that we're going to see a recovery like we have in past years? Last year being a little bit of an asterisk because Burrow went down, so you don't know. Maybe they could have recovered. They look like they were going to kind of start. Or do you think a backslide is incoming because to walk this tightrope is sort of untenable?
Yeah, I don't think we can cross them off yet. I mean, obviously, I missed a guest here on this program, but
no, I mean, I think we're in agreement about that. You know, I don't think we're ready to do that yet. I just think it in the context of the conversation, we should let the Bengals know, and I'm sure that they're curious that they're teetering on a cross off on this show, and I think that's going to mean the world to them if they can turn that around.
And we should let the world know that Mike's a guest.
Yeah, you're welcome. I just think that like 0-3 for this team. You know, like we used to talk a lot about the first 4 games up here in New England were just an extension of the preseason. Like if you can just get through to like 2-2, you're fine. The Bengals, for some reason, have been able to get through the first 4 games at 1-3, you know, and not worry me. So I'm still not worried. The 2 things that are most concerning are the offensive line, and that they didn't really try to replace Joe Mixon. Maybe they didn't think he was a big,
I actually didn't mind their running back play. I really didn't mind.
I was gonna say, but what's elevated is their tight ends.
Yeah,
like Mike Gesicki, we had him last year. He didn't do this, and that's I now I can fully tell you it was not his fault. But they also they had that rookie. Like I think they're a formidable offense, and their defense plays better when their offense is cooking. So no, I don't think they're going to backslide. I still think we're going to see the Bengals at somewhere around 10-7 or 9-8 at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean,
I hope so because we predicted that.
Well, I'm really glad that you're always on top of our predictions because you're a winner.
Why do a show if you don't want to win, right?
That's what you're trying to do. I'm crossing off the Jags. I'm crossing off the Jags. I'm crossing off the Jags, and I am willing to leave to the side one of those adrenaline needles, like from Pulp Fiction, when he like stabs Uma Thurman in the chest and she wakes up. If they fire Doug Peterson in the next 2 weeks, if they're able to do that, and somebody with like some competence comes in, but I don't want to nail myself to this cross because, quite frankly, and I was going to come on to this, I think Trevor Lawrence might be a cross off. I think that he might be all done. I think we might be all done with the Trevor Lawrence experiment. Mike,
did you see the stat where it was comparing him to Bryce Young?
This is exactly the stat I was just about to bring up. The next thing out of my mouth was going to be, Mike, you're a stats guy. Did you see the stat where basically him and Bryce Young are the same guy on paper? You could cover up their names and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the two. His numbers since becoming an NFL quarterback are they're a failing grade. And unfortunately, I did see things when he came into the league, like everybody else, that I thought was going to accelerate him to an elite level. One of the things I saw, and a thing that really stuck out to me, was that he was always super, super aware in the pocket. He was elite, right away, elite at sensing danger. Tom Brady, to me, at his absolute peak, always could sense danger around the blind side. He never really with obviously a few notable exceptions, which I think happens to everybody. He always sensed pressure so well at such an elite level, like in his prime, whichever prime you want to choose. I would say the first one was more evident. But Lawrence, he's trigger happy now. Now that elite skill that I know he had at an NFL level at a certain time seems to have gone. The pocket collapses for a second. He panics. That makes me think that they broke him in Jacksonville. That makes me think that it's that poverty franchise's fault that like a talented quarterback isn't talented. Rarely do we see quarterbacks leave after not succeeding at first and then succeeding down the line, except for this season, I guess. There's like 4 of them. But
right.
But Sam Darnold's an NFL QB now. Fucking Justin Fields is like gone up a few. Geno Smith has like revived his career. Does Jameis come in and replace Deshaun? And like, do we see something happen there? The annual Jameis year. So, all that being said, where do you see it? Where do you see it all going?
So I do think that we can cross off the Jags, but I don't think we should cross off Trevor Lawrence yet, because it's hard for me to cross off a guy whose rookie year he was coached by Urban Meyer and that fucking dumpster fire, and then the next year comes back and leads a come from behind playoff victory.
Take. It's a very reasonable take.
Right?
Really not what we do here.
Sorry, but
I'm just kidding.
I think he's shown that he has it, but he's in a situation where I don't think he gets the amount the pressure that a big market quarterback would be, because it is Jacksonville. We're not accustomed to seeing quarterbacks succeed there.
The entire media has written off Caleb Williams already because he has a terrible.
Chicago's a big market.
It sucks. Like, it is a football. The pressure is really different. The pressure is really different.
But if Caleb came into an awful coaching scenario, and then next year he makes the playoffs and pulls off an 18-point come from behind victory, you're not going to write him off 2 years later. I just don't think you're going to do that. And that's where we are with Trevor. I think he has all the intangibles that we were talking about this in our. He
looks broken though.
Right.
He looks broken. He looks like he looks
very average.
Player.
He hasn't looked like a quarterback that could win games by himself in 2 years.
He might just be a better
over
Mac
2
Jones,
years,
where he can't make the talent around him better, but when there is talent around him, he can take them far. Do you know what I mean? That might be where he is.
I think the comp there is Josh Allen, right? Like, I think we've seen Josh Allen this season become the former of your example. Like, he now is, and I think he always sort of had that kind of thing. Like, you could see that he could do it, but there was like mistake prone football would like always sort of back it up. His leap this season so far, I mean, there is an inevitable overreaction across the league, because this is what we have to talk about. We have a small data set, right? Like, we're here with this smaller data set we're trying to analyze. But to me, it looks like Josh Allen is doing a lot You know, like he's the guy on that team winning those games. And I agree with Bobby completely. I just haven't seen him be the guy to win his team a game or look like he could even do an impression of that guy is the thing. And that kind of stagnant quarterback play from a guy you have high expectations of, like when guys like Trevor Lawrence or like, you know, if you're watching Justin Fields, if you're a fan of him, the guys that Caleb Williams, if the guys that haven't developed fully yet, the jury's still out on Sam Darnold's resurgence, you get excited when they drop back to pass because you're like, what's going to happen? And watching Trevor Lawrence, I really thought I was going to have a good time doing that this year. I was pretty high on them coming in. And unfortunately, it hasn't panned out that way. So I do agree with you, Mike, and Bobby, I think you will too. It's a pretty reasonable take. Bobby and I are a little overreacting when it comes to this stuff, but
he's on like a 12-game losing streak.
It's really not great. I do think like the Doug Peterson of it all. The Doug Peterson of it all, though, you know, if anyone has worn a visor in their life, they should not be permitted into your training facility.
The second losing streak over 10 games of his career. It's not bad. Great. That's not good.
I don't think it's his fault.
Because of where he goes.
No, I understand.
That is true. But I mean, you can say that about Bryce Young too.
Yeah, well, Bryce Young also sucks.
And he's 5'3". Like that's the difference, right?
Yeah,
like,
well,
there's a huge difference.
What about Kyler?
I'm not big on Kyler. He does. I mean, but you know that.
Well, we'll get there. So we've talked briefly about the Jags. I mean, it's not looking great over there. I'm really sorry, Jacksonville fans. It's looking pretty bleak.